welcome to this question and answer session following your viewing of Eclipsed by Patricia Burke-Brogan. I'm Shona Ashmore, the producer. Now, this play was presented by the DLR Mill Theatre back in February 2020, and it was hoped that we would take it on a national tour this autumn, but sadly, due to COVID, this hasn't been possible. However, we really are delighted that you've had the opportunity to watch it either through the Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival or in your own classroom as part of your Leaving Cert syllabus. Now, as a primarily all-female cast and crew, we really were truly honoured to be able to bring Patricia's work to the stage. This award-winning play, set in the 1960s, really was the first play that showed what had happened in the Magdalen laundries, and it was inspired by Patricia's own experiences as a novice. It was poignant, it was funny, moving and sad, but we really were all so reminded of the brutal intolerance of female deviance in our country's past, whilst also being brought through a journey of love, hope, friendship, and of course, survival. Now, joining me on the panel today to discuss this, first of all, we have Kate Canning, who was the director of the play. Kate has directed a number of Shakespeare productions, as well as Playboy of the Western World and The Importance of Being Earnest. She has a true passion for arts education and very much enjoys her work with the Mill Youth Theatre. Kate, thanks for joining us. We also have Rachel with us today, Rachel O'Connell, who played the part of Bridget. Now, Rachel has many credits to her name, but she may be well known to many of you as in her role on the BBC series of The Young Offenders, and also as well as starring in the Irish premiere of her one-woman show, Iphigenia in Splot, and also in Copperface Jacks, the musical. Lastly, we have Miss Muriel Caslin O'Hagan, who played the part of Mother Victoria. Muriel has played a variety of roles, from comedy to tragedy to musicals. And from her successful experience on the drama festival circuit, she has a collection of awards, including the All-Ireland Best Actress. You two are very welcome this morning, Muriel.
Thank you.
So, to start us off, perhaps we can ask Kate, why, when there is such a huge number of plays, did you decide to bring Eclipse to this stage?
Thanks, Shona. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
How are you? So we mentioned the COVID word, and that's it. We're not going to mention it again, right? That's it. It's gone. So it's lovely to be back in the venue this morning because we haven't been given that privilege, and we didn't know at the time that it was such a privilege to be able to come in and work together.
The last one.
And hopefully we'll get a chance to get back here very soon again. So yeah, February 2020 seems like a different world, a whole lifetime ago. And I run the venue here, and with that, I get the opportunity to direct a number of plays during the year, which is such a plus to my job. So I had been thinking about this play. This play had been in my box of tricks, really, I suppose, for a number of years. I actually had been involved in production of it about 18 years ago. I played a part, actually, in it, in an amateur production of it. And so I was very surprised that there hadn't been a professional production of it in the country in a long, long time, you know. So we looked back on previous professional productions, one particularly by Punchbag Theatre Company in Galway, which I think was about 15 years ago. I mean, they might question me on that, maybe 12 years ago. And obviously, I mean, so many things brought me to it because, first of all, you know, I would have such an eager interest in the historical context of this piece, because it's still a live piece of history for us, even this week at the moment, with the redress scheme, in terms of people are still fighting for their rights. We're still arguing over what actually happened. You know, my own grandfather was a doctor. My mother says she can remember phone calls coming into the house and he was, you know, advising young women who were pregnant to go up to Besborough in Cork, which was a mother and baby home, which is, as we know from all our research and discussion, very different to the Magdalen Laundry. And we might get into that a little bit later. So that was very attractive to me to work on a piece of theatre that was so relevant now, so important. Very excited that, you know, our Leaving Cert students across the country are studying the text. And I'm, as you said, Shona, earlier on, you know, very passionate about getting students into the theatre, engaging with them. You know, I think it's such an important medium in terms of learning about who we are as a human being, as a collective, learning about our past, because only when we know the mistakes of our past can we not make them in the future. And then I suppose on the third reason I really wanted to do it was because I have worked with these two wonderfully talented actresses before, actors should we say now, and I was very excited to look at working on a play that was entirely of a female cast, because of course, you know, we've heard all the arguments about how difficult it is to create good work, you know, for women, that you're not necessarily the mother or the vamp or the nurse, you know, that these characters are incredibly complex. And we had such a wonderful team. You know, I think we had, you know, we'd a male set builder, all right, and we'd a male lighting designer. So they keep giving out to us when we keep saying it was a fully female production, which it wasn't. But we did have a female set designer and costume designer and a producer, which you were. And so it was a very interesting, it was an interesting experience just to have, and like that was interesting how much that was picked up even in the, you know, the media attention that we got for the play. And then I suppose lastly, because Patricia Burke-Brogan, who is a Galwegian playwright and is still alive, you know, is with us still. Yeah. It was just wonderful. You know, we don't get the opportunity often to champion Irish female playwrights. You know, I mean, when you look down the list of that, you know, it's wonderful to see Druid at the moment exploring Lady Gregory's work, and you know, a lot of those plays are underperformed. I think Eclipsed is underperformed. We were really looking forward to the opportunity to getting it not just into the Mill, which we did, thank God, but also around the country. Look, please God, we'll get that opportunity again. So it was those really. I mean, I think there are 4 reasons there, and I mean, I could list many others, but that was where we started from. After that, then you're looking at, okay, so, you know, it's all well and good wanting to do a play and a professional production of something, but then you have to ask yourself, well, can I afford to do this? And, but I mean, it just goes to show, you know, we could have sold this play out for a month, you know. Yeah. If not longer. So there was definitely an appetite for it. And you know, so therefore, you know, it would be an easy decision to go ahead with it again. But, you know, putting on quality work is expensive. So you have to, it's not just as simple as wanting to do something, you know.
So, Rachel, when you heard that Kate was putting it on and you obviously decided you wanted to audition, what did you do to prepare then for the audition process?
So it would have been a lot of podcasts, I think I listened to, because there's a lot of survivors who have come out and have, you know, spoken to people about what they went through.
Yeah.
So listening to that firsthand, I think, puts you into that world, like hearing their voices about what actually went on, looking at a lot of like images and stuff because as soon as you look at them, like even looking at them now, it just brings you straight into it, like the atmosphere of what they went through, and seeing the empty beds and seeing the nun holding a baby and loads of it really brings you into that world. And just reading into the script, and because there's so much in that script, she gives you everything in it, doesn't she, Kate? Like there's
so like Rachel and I would have worked together for a long time. So there was no favoritism at all. But Rachel, we did a lovely production of the Playboy, The Western World here 2 years ago, and we actually revived it again. And so Rachel played Peggy and Mike in that production. So when I read Eclipsed...
she's similar to Bridget.
I was, now of course Rachel went through the audition process and there was like, but we, certainly when I read it and then I gave her the script and I said, you read that and you come back to me and you tell me what character you're drawn to. But I, in my head, was like, she was my Bridget always, do you know?
Yeah.
And then, of course, she came back and she was like, I want to play Bridget. Like, great, you know?
And we all went, thank goodness.
Yeah. So, so that was, she was always in my head in that. And then it was, so then, and for Muriel as well, I think it was interesting. I discussed that a lot with Muriel because her character is Mother Victoria, and it was such an integral part of the play. She, in the fairy tale version of the play, obviously the villain, but I was very conscious of creating a human being behind the veil, and I knew that Muriel could do that, and we discussed that, and I didn't want to bring a stereotype, fist on the table, characterization to that character. I wanted to bring something a little softer, with a little more humanity, and I knew Muriel could do that. So that was kind of where we, we're in terms of the casting, we probably started off there,
And Muriel, what about yourself? Did you explore the same ways as Rachel did to look into the character?
No, I'm from a different era. Because I grew up during those times. And I actually went to a boarding school, to a convent, and there was a laundry attached to it. Okay. Now, it wasn't a mother and baby, it wasn't a Magdalene home, but there were young girls working there. And all it could remind, when we talked about, well, first of all, I shared the passion that Kate had to do this production from whenever she mentioned it, and I really was taken with it. But it just brought me back to that time when I was young and naive and innocent, and I think in comparison with today's world, we were very deprived of knowledge and information. And so we just accepted that these girls who worked in the laundry, who were there to do our laundry, us as students, and were separate from us. We had no connection with them, we had no integration with them, and they looked downtrodden and they looked, very deprived.
Yeah.
So that was in the back of my mind all the time. And then I'm remembering the nuns whom I encountered, who were fine women. Some of them we were terrified of course, but most of them were women whom we could engage with. And this, I wanted to, like Kate mentioned there, I wanted to get that humanity across, that this woman was representing society. This Reverend Mother in Eclipsed was representing society as a whole almost, and doing her duty and obeying the rules that were imposed upon her. She was simply doing her job.
Yeah, it's very interesting in the play because we really sat around the table for a long time before we got up on our feet discussing that point about, this wasn't just about the nuns. It wasn't just about the Catholic power. It was about, well, maybe it was about the Catholic power over society at the time. But we first meet Kathy, for example, when she's brought back by the community, ultimately, and that's that idea that, we were all their jailers, and we didn't give even the families, it's a generalization, but it was the shame. And, we were really lucky because when we first came into the rehearsal room, we were joined by Dr. Sarah Ann Buckley, who is a history lecturer in NUIG. And I was really anxious that the cast and the team, really were on the same page in terms of what the historical context was and really understood the levels of this, because it was, I think, wouldn't you agree, it was just so interesting even to hear the difference about the mother and babies homes versus the Magdalene laundries. So the women in the Magdalene laundries, the overall word to use in terms of what we as society believed of them was that they were deviant. And it wasn't just sexually deviant, it was, they may have been in there because they weren't, maybe there was an issue, maybe there was a developmental issue with them, or they were vulnerable adults, or maybe they had stolen, you know, they could have, you know, they were criminals, considered criminals, but, you know, whatever that was. And then, yes, of course, women who may have, you know, who were pregnant outside of wedlock or you know, had even rumors about them. Like, it was just very grey, you know. So unlike mother and baby homes were specifically for pregnant women who, you know. So that was a hugely important, you know, we wanted to have that feeling of the outside, like Bridget talks about it, Kathy talks about it, you know, about getting out, about what outside would do to them and how they didn't know whether they could flourish in the outside world anymore. And I mean, that was the institutionalization of it all. And that was, you know, so it isn't just the nuns versus them. It's bigger than that, isn't it?
Because we asked that. Remember, like, one of the big questions was like, why don't they just leave?
Yes.
Why don't they walk out the door?
All the time.
I was like, why can't they just walk out the door? I just felt so...
Completely, yeah. And like you'll notice in our set, so when we were looking at designing the set, I always had an image in my head of a door with bars on it. And that idea of that's where you can go, but like you guys are in here. And the nuns come in and out of that all the time. And also that it's up in a height on the stage, which gives us the sense of they're above you. So like we play a lot of Sister or Mother Victoria's scenes up there down to the girls because of course she is superior to them in her mind and in society's mind. And then we bring Sister Virginia down to them a lot, into them as a grouping again, because obviously she wants to help. She wants to she's very conflicted in her own mind about why she's there and what she's doing and why these women are being treated as they are. So we were really conscious that Patricia Burke-Brogan herself was a postulant in a Magdalene Laundry in Galway, and Sister Victoria is representative for Patricia herself. And Patricia always asked why was, you know, she couldn't take it at all. Like, why were these women in here working the way they were working for nothing and being treated in the manner they were in? So, I mean, I just think Leisha did such a beautiful job of that part. That second scene in third scene in Act 1 where she is praying to God and her relationship with Virginia. They were really difficult scenes, those scenes, because we were, you know, especially even physically on the stage, because you're trying to take them out of the laundry set, but then you don't want to have to close off a whole piece of the stage just because, you know, so it was a very difficult one for me. It's not something I ever felt I got right, but, you know, and nothing with the actors, but in terms of the physicality of the piece. So that was interesting. I mean, I can see it in a movie working really well, you know. I mean, it would be a brilliant movie.
It was beautiful though, Kate, when she was lying down and Chris had the light.
Oh, that was beautiful.
With the cross through the window. I thought that was just
gorgeous.
It just brought us straight into the church.
And Leisha is actually, Leisha is from England, and she had been involved in a production. She played Ophelia here for us am I right? I am, in Hamlet. And she, when she heard we were doing Eclipsed, she sent me, you know, an email and said, look, I really would be interested in playing Sister Virginia. And I was like, you know, because I was like, can't you know, because I thought, but actually,
her mom's from Mayo.
Never ever, because I mean, there was no way Sister Virginia was going to have any sort of, she was a young, like, you know, West of Ireland, we assumed young nun. So anyway, she came in and she killed the audition with her beautiful Irish accent. Yeah. So, but it was, you know, I think Patricia Burke-Brogan writes such a great play in having those opposing characters with Sister Virginia and Mother Victoria and those battles and those huge. I mean, I think it was wonderful watching the play with the audience. I mean, that line you have, Muriel, where you refer to the 7 generations of sin, isn't it? And there would be an audible gasp from the now audience, whereas at the time when you were like in the 60s, people were like, oh yeah,
that's true.
Normal.
Whereas now, like the idea that we have to live the sins of our 7 generations, I mean, it's farcical, you know.
And what about you, Rachel? What did you think that was the most challenging part through it for Bridget?
Do you know what? Because there's Patricia Burke-Brogan, she put so much, there's quite a lot of comedy in it.
Yeah.
And I think we wanted to get a lot of the comedy out of it because it does go so dark and so like
Cruel.
yeah, really cruel, and the subject is it's beyond thinking about, because nowadays you'd think how can it be possible? How can the society let that happen? So, but we didn't want it to then enter a realm where it's like, oh, we're having a laugh and
Exactly.
a jolly
No,
old
not at all.
time. We're
No.
all sitting around having tea and cake and stuff. So I think
kissing
trying to
Elvis.
but trying to get those moments in of the comic relief,
Yes.
but also then showing the effect that it did have living in this world. I think one scene in particular that we spoke about, Kate, was the lipstick scene. So when my character Bridget attacks Sister Virginia with the lipstick, so like the choreography of that was difficult to get right, and it did, like, we nearly took a whole day for that almost, I'd say, just like coming around the table where like I smash everything. I think I smashed a glass, I think, once in the rehearsal, because
Yeah.
there was a glass on the table and I smashed everything off it. And when I go to like attack her and rip the habit off her head, like there's so much technical stuff to think of.
Yeah.
But when we got it right, I think yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Rachel's right. I mean, that the balance between the comedy and the pathos was very difficult, because we so wanted to keep it in reality, but at the end of the day, it is theatre.
Yeah.
And we are telling a story, and there is, but I think, again, how well written a play it is from Patricia's point of view, in that the humour brings humanity
Yeah.
to the girls. It brings character to the girls.
Brings
The girls are so well drawn. The women are so well drawn. Like you have Bridget, you know, the feisty
survivor, who's
but like deeply affected, you know, and
she's
her
so angry, yeah.
her deep desire to get out and find her baby. And then you have Nellie Nora, who is the most institutionalized of them. And we meet her at the beginning of the play and at the end of the play. And like that unbelievable moment where an adult Rosa says to her, like, can I come back and can we take you out? Could we take you out for tea and cake or something? And she says, no, thanks.
No.
I mean, like, it is the saddest moment of the play for me, because like,
I don't
can't.
go
she
out
just
much.
can't.
I don't go out much.
I don't go out much.
And
No.
you know, and then you have Kathy again, who we decided that Kathy, you know, had come from wealth, or come from, she wasn't, you know, there was a difference in her, and she obviously had her medical problems, and again her deep desire to get out for her twins, and the story behind that. And you know, and then you have Ailish's character Mandy, who was you know, again, we wanted to be very, very careful about our interpretation, and I just thought Ailish did such a great job again. All the girls have done incredible jobs. And Ailish, you know, we didn't want to make, because again, she can be the light comedy, she can be the relief in it, but she needs to be a really real character as well. And like, we did discuss a lot, like what happened to her? Like, did something very traumatic happen here, that she removes herself from reality.
She's in her
entirely.
own world.
She had a beautiful, simplistic
Again,
approach
I was
to
really
it.
conscious as director of bringing each of the characters to a close of the play. And if you'll notice, like in her last moment, we take it down on her with the petals, and she's just pulling the petals off, and that sense of like the monotony of that, and the sadness of it, and the loss of it, you know, almost the loss of her marbles, like, you know. And then beautiful Neve, who our gorgeous little girl,
Juliet.
Neve had played a non-speaking role in the Playboy with us, part of our youth theatre here in the Mill, and you know, I'd seen huge potential in her, and we got her in, you know, to read for her character, and she was just gorgeous, and I just think she brought such a believability to it, didn't she? You know, that she did. There was such an innocence,
to what's happening.
And so again, like what became of her, and we don't, you know, the just the utter. So yeah, and then we had the adult Rosa then. Played by Hilary Madigan, yes. That was wonderful to have her involved in the very beginning and end. And again, a very integral part to the play, because we're brought into the now. We're brought into the now, and the legacy of what this was, with all these lost children and all these people who didn't know where they'd come from, or And it was
Searching
made so difficult for them to find out anything about them.
Yeah.
And even to this week, and, you know,
Yeah,
we've Dr. Maeve O'Rourke talking to us, you know, again, and we'll be giving all that out to the students later on as well. You know, she's so actively involved in the fight for the rights of these women and families to know, and these children as well, because the children are as much involved in it as the women, and to have a right, I mean, everyone needs to know who they are, like, you know, so.
I loved her use of like putting in particular Elvis plays, Elvis sings. And it's like, I think that really showed that these were regular women. They weren't back then. I imagine you'd say, "Oh, that's a Magdalene girl," or "That's a," and there'd be some sort of a mark on them that you'd think of them as a certain type of, when they were just like any other girl.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I mean, Elvis was interesting on so many levels, because first of all, it brought in where we were. But right, like the minute, so the play
Straight
opens with
away.
Elvis.
Yeah.
And
You know,
you're
the
brought
time
right
you're in.
into that, his world and their world. And the fact, and also what I love about Patricia's decision to bring him in was like, there was a level of sort of like sexiness to it. You know what I mean? Like that these women were like he was, God, he was an idol, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea like that, you know, we were all, there was this man almost, you know, and the fact that obviously this gorgeous scene, I mean, the most gorgeous scene.
fantastic
Again, a
for the
really
mannequin.
difficult scene for us to get right. It was a really hard one for us to get right, the wedding scene. Because again, you had so much choreography. It was really about timing, you know. Again, we didn't want to make it melodramatic, but we wanted...
Do you want to make it like a musical?
You could really throw that scene up in the air. You could have clothes coming from all over, and, you know, you could have big, gorgeous kisses and everything. But we were
But
like,
it was
no,
just the bits that they had lying around that they were trying to make do.
Like we could have
The fact that his
given
head
him
didn't
glasses
fit.
and a moustache, or, you know, we could have really gone to town with that.
It was my favourite bit
But
at
we
the
were
end,
so...
where you just put the head on and it was like, there's your Elvis.
I know.
And she was like, oh, wow.
I know. And even like from Ailish's point of view, I thought it was very well judged for her. We talked a lot about that. And you know, because she could have made that a really sort of bigger scene than it was in terms of vocal and movement. But she stayed
It was tender.
quite down, and I thought that
Tender
made
is a
it more
good word,
important.
yeah.
I mean, I just loved that scene. It's
beautiful.
such a beautiful scene to end the first half as well.
Yeah.
Just again, from the arc of the play, Patricia was just it was such a well thought out arc, you know? Yeah.
Muriel, what would have been your highlight?
I found the two scenes with Sister Virginia.
Yes.
Trying to encourage her to observe the rules and carry them through, and this will stand to you, and all this kind of stuff. And Mother Victoria was not a very empathetic kind of character in terms of the audience. You know, she was probably, as you say, the villain of the piece. But at the same time, she did show a certain gentleness surprisingly, to Sister Virginia at one point when she tried to say, I will pray for you. That was her only way of being able to communicate to her that she had a feeling for her.
Yeah.
She puts her hand on her head and says, I will pray for you. I just found that very moving.
Yeah.
Just two words nearly, you know.
I always thought, you know, when you came in and said, Kathy, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Kathy,
Yes.
she suffocated in the basket. And then you just say, you turn around and it's like, okay, say your prayers or continue with the roles. And then when you walk, it was just so powerful the way you did it. It was
when
amazing.
Kathy, who had escaped in the basket, and then it turns out that she had died. And the news had come to Mother Victoria, so she had to come in, and she obviously had her coif.
Yeah.
And tried to hand it to Sister Virginia, who was so distraught she couldn't accept it. And for a second or two, you could see that Mother Victoria was not quite sure how to handle this. And I'm sure probably something similar would have happened in the home before that, but nevertheless, it did affect her. And as you say, she referred to prayer, and she got her strength. That's where she got her strength. She had great faith, and she had her prayer.
Which I think was interesting, you know, because I think that pushes Bridget over the edge. Like that moment pushes you over the edge. And the idea even that Mother Victoria, like, it's almost like, oh, well, it's fine. She's with God now. And your response to that is, that is not good enough.
Yeah.
I want to live now.
life,
I want to
yeah.
live now. I don't care if you think I'm going to heaven.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Life is
I
here.
need to
Life
go.
is
Yeah.
now,
And like,
right
I
now.
just,
Yeah.
that is an incredible speech that Patricia
Yeah.
writes for you
Oh,
there.
I love that.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I am getting
Yeah.
out, I'm going to do it. And like, obviously, you know, we're so happy that you go. I mean, I remember like when we watched it with the audience, there was almost a want to applaud you when you got out, you know.
Yes.
And then obviously the sadness then when we get to, you know, because we realised throughout the play that Rosa is your daughter and that we've met Rosa at the beginning. And then at the end, we understand that you never found her.
Never.
But look, let's hope that you got out.
Oh, she
and
got
you
out and
found,
she
Sounds
had a
you know,
great
and
life.
you
great
found
life.
Yeah.
joy
She
and
found Elvis.
love. Exactly, yeah. And you know that you found some happiness because
Because that's what, it's the hope, isn't it? Because that's what she
Completely.
had throughout being a survivor. She had that
and
hope.
you're the only one who brings us any hope. You know, Kathy's gone. We assume, well, we know that Mandy ends up in a mental institution. We don't know, all right, what happens. What was Neve's character again?
Juliet.
Juliet.
Yeah, Juliet. So you know that. And maybe Juliet, maybe something. But you know, but you'd wonder with Sister Virginia, like after that, was she going to go? Or was she going to, you know...
Because her brother was a priest,
Her brother
wasn't
was a
it?
priest.
So the whole family was involved. Did she therefore stay in it?
Yeah.
facilitated
And if
her
she
to
did,
get
then
out.
great, because you'd feel, all right, well, there'll be a bit of hope there with Juliet. Maybe
Yeah.
she'll educate Juliet. And
Yeah.
education was key, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
And the real theme of friendship, I think, really came out with you and all the girls.
Yeah.
You know, because you all needed a little part of everybody, didn't you?
Yeah.
To kind of keep yourselves going.
To keep going, like you can see that throughout the play and the little things that they do for each other and
It was
for
essential,
Kathy's
yeah.
birthday and stuff
Yes.
when they had like
The little heart
the
sweets
little
and-
heart sweet, like I made you something, or she kept a little heart, wrapped it in a tissue.
That's
said,
right,
look,
yeah.
there's happy birthday. Like little small things that they would have done for each other, and how, I suppose, how you do cope if you are locked in somewhere against your will and told you're not getting out, and how you're able to survive with each other, and you know.
And again, like, that's all on purpose. Patricia has popped those bits of colour in, you know, even if it's a flower or, you know,
Because
the
it's
love
humanity.
hearts.
It's
Or, you know, it's all,
yeah, it's real.
she's doing that just to show, like, it's like, you know, a desert, and every so often there's just like
There's a
pop,
tiny
pop
bit of
colour.
hope. It's that
Yes.
tiny bit of hope. That's
And like,
big.
you're like sisters, you know, you're not like even friends. You fight like
Yeah. Oh,
sisters.
yeah.
You have your
And
moments.
Absolutely.
you know, and the frustration of your situation breaks out in you so often. And
Especially
you're
with Mandy.
cruel to each other.
Yeah, because
You
with
know,
Mandy, it can be so like, we try and look after her and, you know, we humour her. But then there's that scene when...
the Elvis letter.
Yeah, the Elvis letter.
Yes.
Elvis isn't coming, and she literally, like,
That's right,
breaks
yeah.
her heart. And then realises, I've gone too far. But she's pushed over the edge.
Yeah. Yeah, like in terms of like for the Leaving Cert comparative study, I mean, it's been great. It's just brilliant to know that that's
What
on
a
the
great play to
syllabus.
study.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great place to
God,
study.
I love it, yeah.
And like friendship is key, you know, and power, you know, and the historical context, which I know we keep coming back to all the time, you know, because we had that discussion so often, Muriel, didn't we? You know, about how far we've come now.
Yeah.
You know, and like we found that so difficult as women to understand why they just didn't stand up to them and say, look, I'm not
doing
staying
it.
here.
Yeah.
But it,
Well,
'Cause we always wondered
was
where
so
they'd go.
Delighted
Like, yeah.
that when my daughter came to see it, and she would have no understanding of, not no understanding, but to try and visualise how real, in reality, this was presented. So she was absolutely blown away by it, really, the effect of it. She can't, I mean, this generation, as you know, Rachel, you can't imagine
we
that.
can't fathom.
And it's not that, well, I can say that it's not that far away. You know?
No, it
isn't,
wasn't.
though. My grandmother was, what's that word, churched when after you gave
Oh,
birth. You'd have
the
to go to
thought
the
of that,
priest
absolutely.
and he'd
Yeah.
have to absolve you of any sin because you just had a baby.
Yes.
Like the most natural thing,
Couldn't be allowed,
having a
wouldn't be
child.
allowed to. the church or to sacraments until you were churched after birth.
And of course, the
strange.
subject matter came up of where were all the men?
Where were the men? Yeah, the men who were like
Because like it takes
can't
two
have a
to
baby
tango,
on your
you know?
own. Like, yeah, exactly.
Takes two to tango.
But it's, you know, I guess again it just comes down to societal, you know, a
Brush away the
societal
problem.
decision. Yeah.
The woman was the
And-
problem. Brush her away. Put her into a.
And in
home,
terms of
yeah.
even like regarding, say, which we're so delighted to be part of, the Human Rights and Arts Festival, run by Smashing Times. I mean, you know, it comes down to a lot of the times the church and the church's
control over it.
and also the church's relationship with power, the
Yeah.
church's relationship with those who hold power,
Yeah.
and whether they have the power themselves. And not that, of course, you know, faith is very, very important. And I mean, I think in terms of the sisters in the play, that comes across. Patricia writes that really well.
Really well.
She doesn't demonize them at all. Like their faith is very, very important to them.
So
And even for Nellie Nora, her
Yeah.
faith is hugely important to her.
Yeah.
And like that, yeah, Niamh McGrath played Nellie Nora, and she was just
Beautiful.
so gorgeous. And it's funny, you know, Niamh was never physically my Nellie Nora. I always imagined Nellie Nora as a really tall, kind of a lanky person. And I remember Niamh came into the audition, and I was just, Niamh has a physicalization where she gets her elbows up to her ears or
Yeah.
something, and I was just like, I love this,
You're like,
you
that's
know.
my Nellie Nora.
And
Yes.
vocally, I just loved her as well. I just thought, you know,
I thought
she
she was
vulnerability.
she played her much. What I loved about Niamh's interpretation was, you knew Niamh was a woman in her 30s, in her mid 30s or early 30s or whatever, but she played her like she was in her mid 40s, which is what Nellie Nora would have come
yeah.
across. Do you know what I mean?
She played an older one.
And because
Yeah.
you do, like, you would age inside in a place
Of course,
Like that.
Oh my God,
Beyond
yeah.
your years.
I
Yeah.
thought she was almost, well, apart from Kathy, of course, who died, but she to me was the most, the saddest person.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
You
agree.
knew she'd
Yeah,
never
because
get
she
out.
lost her fight.
She
Yeah.
did, yeah. And,
Yes,
and
mother,
I mean,
yes,
even
mother.
like I found, you know, as Mother Victoria would come in the odd time, she would be so
Yeah.
subservient.
So we're so
and-
conscious of that. Yeah.
And she'd be ironing away there and just almost afraid to lift her eye in the direction
Yeah.
of Mother.
And like
she played it beautifully.
We did all that very much on purpose. I mean, we in rehearsal, it was always a case, okay, when Mother Victoria comes in, how do we all
React.
How do we all
Yeah.
feel right now? You know, like we didn't want it to be that all the girls were the one. We were so conscious of just, you know, distinguishing them all,
Yeah.
you know? And those wonderful moments where Bridget stands up to her.
Yeah.
And do you remember when we
smoky.
when we were rehearsing that originally, like we made it very physical. And then as we went through the rehearsal process, we started to kind of pull back
Pull
on
it
it.
all back.
But yet it was almost the sense was there still.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, and I loved that actually almost flushed itself out for us, you know.
Yeah.
It ended up being a little less confrontational, but the kind
So we
of the
want
power.
to pick our moments as well for
Yeah.
when our arc was, when the climax came.
Yeah.
We didn't want
Yeah.
to-
For the,
And Martha
to
Dunlea
serve the
then
play.
played Kathy. She was our gorgeous Kathy, yeah. And like it was a very, like I always say, Kathy's a very, very tough part because she's the less extreme of all of them. Like Nellie Nora is extremely one way, Bridget is extremely another, and Mandy's extremely another. And Kathy's kind of, you know, she's more understated, you know. And we had, you know, Martha and the team and the rest of the girls and myself, it was a difficult one in terms of her ailment. Because
I think
you
that's
want
held her back. She was coping with her physical, her,
completely.
her
And
medical
it was like, it was
situation.
almost for us, we you know, I think Martha and I really decided that it was her pain and her grief was causing this in her.
Yeah.
She actually couldn't live without
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
She was in
She
so
was
much pain.
dying. Yeah.
But again, when you're trying to portray that on stage physically with the asthma, you have to be really careful that it doesn't take over the character. Like you need to project, you need to, you know. And so we, if you notice, even in our sound plot, we put in that sound of breath, you know, that sound of that heavy breath of gasping for air and so on and so on. And just the way the girls looked after her as well and brought her Vicks inhalations or whatever, you know.
Around the
bowl of
table,
steam.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just such I mean, it's such a brilliant way to explore the whole topic, isn't it? Because you become obsessed a little bit with it, don't you?
But it's a very important play that shouldn't be lost or forgotten. I think this is such a strong illustration of our history of that time, and it can be so well understood from it.
Yeah.
You know.
And like, it was a really interesting one, like, because I had been trying to, to secure the rights for a long time, and and I knew Patricia was still alive and living in Galway, and I, you know, as Kate Kenning sometimes does, I was like pushy to the point of obnoxious, trying to figure out where I could get these rights from. So, and eventually, you know, for Patricia, you know, and I don't think her family will mind me saying this, but for Patricia, it's really important for her to get the story out there. And, you know, she wants the play to be, I mean, I think she will be very excited to know that the play is being seen by so many students. And I just think for her, that's the most important thing.
Job done.
I mean, job done, yeah.
Because when it came out at first, I mean, she got an awful lot of backlash, you know, obviously because of it. And now that we can actually say that it's on the Leaving Cert
Stand
curriculum,
back from it.
and it's been broadcast, I mean, it's
Brilliant
fantastic.
decision by the department,
Yeah,
like to put it on, you know.
Yeah, really.
I hope
great.
it stays on, and I hope more and more teachers
Get to hear of it because
get
of
to do
this.
it. Yeah,
It should be
yeah.
great.
And I think it's lovely as well because, you know, a lot of teachers, because we obviously, as the Mill, which both of you have been involved in many Shakespeare productions with us, we do a lot of school, you know, of shows for students to come and look at, and so it's great that this is kind of added to our portfolio, and you know, and I think the fact that those teachers who would traditionally come and watch our Shakespeare, if they know that we have Eclipsed and we're doing Eclipsed, then they make the decision, oh well, we can do that for our
add that
comparative
in.
study as
Yeah.
well, you know.
Yeah.
Because again, like we say, it's such a kind of an important, you know, and I think what, you know, it's so important to see it off the page, not just, you know,
Yes.
like I think the script itself is very accessible. I think it was so well written. You know, she's very specific in her stage direction, in choices of music. I mean, even to the point like the Handel piece, He Was Despised.
Oh, yes.
She actually specifically says that should be a version by Kathleen Ferrier, you know, a specific soprano. And I love that. She makes the director's job so easy, like because she just picks it, and you know, even that opening piece where the girls put their hands up to the see-through, you know, that actually kind of organically happened. It was funny. It was never something in my head, and then when I saw them back there, and then the script names them, and I just thought we need to have there needs to be something here, you know. And I just loved it then when it was there. And the idea of Nellie Norris standing behind the bars and with that Kathleen Ferrier, like, religious piece just flying out over the rafters, you know. And I think, you see, that's what you don't see when you're reading it in the classroom. That's where the power comes in and the symbol, you know.
And Florentina's set obviously really added and helped you guys tremendously.
Amazing.
You know?
Especially to like give you the sense of the laundry and the work. Like when we were working, we were like really sewing, we were really scrubbing with like the taps were working, we had water.
And the sense of the steam and the expeller thing, the
noise,
the fan and everything.
Their skin would have been raw.
Such an unhealthy
the
environment.
and the bleach and like the sound of the machines constantly whirring, like just
Yeah, so Florentina designed the set and she designed the costumes. So that was an interesting one. You know, Florentina's just graduated with an MFA from the Lyre. I was very excited to work with her, having seen her work before. And really, she was, you know, an integral part of the team. The set was a big set. I mean, it was expensive, which, like, you know, and it was a tough build. It was a really tough build. I mean, looking back on it, I think we would have all preferred to have an extra couple of days doing that set. Because that's why we love to have multiple people with passion working on our team, because she was not taking no for an answer. She was like, no, I want it. I want that. So like we had this argument with the pipes would we just have one pipe? And she was like, no, I want two pipes.
yeah.
I want two pipes up there. And like the textures she got out of this, the thing, the griminess, the sense of like nothing has been done to this room in 50 years, you know, and the girls are living in it and they're breathing in the toxins and they're sweating and they're, you know, and it's just not a nice place to be really. And the noise, I mean, even the noise, like at the moment I'm living in my house and there's building work going on outside and the drilling, it starts at 7 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And I mean, they were dealing with that. You know, it was coming at them from all senses. Smell, heat, noise, you know, I mean, you know, their hair. Like, can you imagine, like, just
everything.
No. I mean, at the end of the day, like, the play, and like, we're talking about the Human Rights and Arts Festival. Like, their basic human rights were taken away from them. Yeah. And like, I remember we all talking about that again at the beginning of the rehearsal process. It's not just, you know, human rights is not just to be fed and to be watered and to be able to breathe clean air, which of course is the basic human right, and to be able to sleep. Yeah. But it's also like to love and be loved and
respect, have
the power to be respected and to and then have the ability to go and find those things for yourself if you want them. And I mean, they were absolutely stripped of those, you know. And it can't be forgotten, you know.
No.
And it has to be remembered. And what better way to remember it than by performing it, you know? Whether that's in a piece of artwork or a song or a poem or a play, you know, it's important, you know.
Yeah. Which underlines the importance of the art in this.
Yes,
in
these current times.
During these times, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Generally.
So I think we have a lot to thank Patricia Burt-Brogan for putting that pen to paper all those years ago, and also to you ladies for bringing it to fruition.
Well. Yes, absolutely. Wish her well.
Wish her well. And we hope you've all thoroughly enjoyed, obviously, watching it and then enjoying this discussion. And we wish you all your success, obviously, with your Leaving Cert and to Smashing Times. We hope that the festival goes particularly well. But for just now, I'd just like to thank Kate and Muriel and Rachel for joining us today. And thanks very much for watching.